It's been raining in Memphis the last 2 days, but it feels like it's been raining on the Grizzlies for weeks, months. Let's talk about our big idea for the day. Go ahead and get me through it. Memphis Grizzlies have lost 4 straight, took 3 losses in a row at home, 2 of which were the teams they were battling with in the Western Conference playoff race, your Golden State Warriors and your LA Lakers. The loss initially dropped Memphis to 6th in the West. Technically, they're 8th in the West now with 6 games left in the regular season. In the next 4, they've got the Miami Heat, the Detroit Pistons, and the Charlotte Hornets all on the road, and they've got the Minnesota Timberwolves at home. That's next Thursday. NBA play-in begins on April the 15th. It's safe to say the need for urgency is at an all-time high. At least that's what Jaren Jackson Jr. said.
Every game, it ratchets up every game. It's got to be at an all-time high now. We know that there's no time for it to not be as urgent as possible, so it's at an all-time high.
We got to protect home court and go out and get wins. Just flip the script and, take a different mentality on the road.
One day at a time, you control the controllables. You do everything you can in that time frame, and no matter where we end up, our games will continue after the regular season, and we will be at our best when the postseason starts.
Okay, so what was interesting to me, especially about what Tomas Isalo, I'm still working on saying that here as he's become the interim head coach. When he made that announcement, he was talking about relegation because he coached in Europe, right? He was the head coach of the year, or coach of the year of the Euro Cup a couple of years ago, and they have that concept, which is really more you think about in soccer, which is relegation, right?
Right.
But he's like, I'm kind of chilling, right? Like, regardless of what happens, we're going to be playing in the postseason. We're not going to get relegated. And, that is such a weird concept to think about in American sports because that's not a thing that we think about. For everybody in Grizzland, we're at DEFCON 5 right now. Or does it go in the reverse? Is it DEFCON 1? Which one's the most important?
DEFCON 1.
DEFCON 1. Okay, so we're in DEFCON 1 right now as
Yeah.
the Grizzlies try to get into the postseason stretch. What do you think about where they are and kind of what's happened up until now, especially these last 3-4 games?
Not great.
Not great, yeah.
Right? They don't look right. And if it ain't one thing, it's another, right? And that's the problem you're seeing every night. Offensively, they may not have it. Defensively, they have not had it at all
for a long time.
Since the trade deadline or the All-Star break. And you look back at the trade deadline, for example, and you look at Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart, and you look at this team, who is awful at covering the three-point line. You're saying, those would have been our 2 best perimeter defenders. But either way, you don't feel great about where they're at right now. I do get a kick out of Tomas Isalo right there and what he had to say. We always got on to Taylor Jenkins about coach speak, but one day at a time, control the controllables is about as coach speak as it gets. But this team, I think since they've made the switch from Taylor Jenkins to Tomas Isalo, they've done a better job offensively at utilizing what they have in their starting lineup. Ja has played really well under Isalo. Zach Edey is a guy who has 2 double-doubles in 3 games under Tomas Isalo. Now, granted, he was playing against smaller teams, Warriors and the Lakers
I don't know if
in
we've gotten that all
particular.
year. I mean, he's definitely had his double-doubles in the stretches, but 2 in 3 games is impressive.
I see some offensive things that I like, a little more high pick and roll in tough situations, but I think the biggest thing, and I have this written down, this is my very little notes that I have of today.
Gabe Kuhn stat of the day.
Exactly. But I look at these last 4 games and these losses, and in those make or break moments that we've come used to, Ja, call 12,
right.
Be clutch, go win these games late when it's close, when it's up in the air, right? The make or break moments, they're breaking. They're breaking. You look at that game the other night, they're up 121-16 with 3:38 left. Warriors then go on a 9-0 run. You look against the Celtics, they're down 110-103. Now, they were down by a lot more than that, but they came back and they had a chance. Down by 7 with 2:55 in the NBA. Right. That's an eternity to go tie that ball game up. And
especially
they let the Celtics.
Especially with the shooters that you have on this team.
Right.
Ideally.
Right.
And the 2 superstars that you have in Ja and Jaren. 7 points is a deficit you can make up pretty quick.
But in that 2:55, they allow the Celtics to go on a 7-0 run to end the game. The Lakers, you're tied 113-113 with 6:46 left. And the Lakers outscore you 21-14 to the finish line. And then the Thunder, that's probably the worst example. You're up 99-97 with 7:41 left, and you give up a 16-0 run. So, in these make or break moments, they're just breaking down. And, I think when we look at 2 and 3 years ago, the 50-win season, second in the West, more often than not they would come through in those situations, even against the best teams.
Yeah, I think you're certainly right. And what we are seeing, they are playing better, right?
Sure.
But I think Desmond Bain put it best is like, yeah, we're playing good basketball, we're just not playing good enough to win. And that's really where the rubber meets the road right now is like you're just not winning games, you're not doing just enough. To me, 3-point defense still sticks out a lot. I mean, they've had a couple, especially in this last 3-4 games that they had, 2 games where you allow 40 points in the second quarter. I think it was to the Lakers. The Warriors have a 40-point quarter. Of course, Steph Curry goes for almost 30, I think, in that first half of that game. And so you can't allow those things to happen. Since the All-Star break, they are allowing almost 39% from 3. That's 27th in the NBA in that stretch. And so until you fix that, I don't think it's going to matter what you fix offensively because we're seeing they're not having problems scoring. You know, they're getting in the 115, 125, 130 range. They're hanging with folks. They're just not, to your point, closing, and especially on the defensive end. You have one quarter a game that it feels like this is kind of the end, and this is where we lost the game. And you can point to it, and it's weird that in pretty much every game so thus far, there's a quarter that you can point to, a stretch that you can point to. It's like, oh, this is where we lost the game. Most definitely. And to me, a lot of it sticks out on the 3-point range. Let's talk about what the Western Conference standings look like as of today, as of this morning. The Timberwolves beat the Nuggets in that crazy double overtime game. The Clippers beat the Pelicans last night. So now officially the Grizzlies are in 8th place, although I guess technically it's like they're tied 4-6, right? All 3 of the Grizz-Wolves and Clippers tied at 44 and 32. They have the tiebreaker over the Timberwolves in the event that it's just them 2 that are tied for that 6th spot. And you like that, but they do get the Timberwolves one more time, and the Timberwolves are a team that's playing much better. You got the LA Clippers who have basically walked them down from where they are. And what really, and I got my logos mixed up here now that I'm looking at it, but really as you went into this stretch, you lose to the Lakers and you lose to the Golden State Warriors, and those are the 2 teams that where it feels like it's 2 games instead of just 1, right? Mm-hmm. Because they gain a W, you take a loss, it's essentially 2 games. And that's why the stretch that they've been on thus far has been really frustrating, I think, if you're a fan, because you literally watch these teams just walk you down. And now you're looking at the 8th place, now you're looking at 8th place with an interim head coach, and you're like, what is Tomas expected to do? Tomas.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the rest of the Western Conference. And by the way, just to be clear about those standings that you just saw, those are really good. Like that, like the fact that we're talking about
the West is really good.
1 through 8, 8 is 44 and 32. Like that's a good Western Conference, as it normally is. Yeah. But you know what? I look at the rest of the Western Conference, 1 through 8. All the other 7 teams, with maybe the exception of the Nuggets, but they've been floating around, 5-5 for their last 10. But you look at the last 10 for all of those teams, and most of them are 8-2, 7-3. The worst you'll see is 5-5. You'll throw in a 9-1 there. You'll throw in a 10-0. Look at the Thunder, for example. But then you see the Grizzlies in 3-7, 2-8, and it's like that. You see everybody else in the West gaining momentum at the right time of the year.
Everybody's playing their best basketball.
And the Grizzlies are just losing it every single time out. And they're just in a frustrating spot, man, and they can't buy a win. I know they're frustrated behind the scenes, too, because it doesn't feel like it's a lack of effort at this point, especially with Tomas Asalo taking over. They're playing hard for him. It's just not coming together for them on both sides of the ball. Both sides of the floor.
And I think you feel it the most in your leaders, right? You see Ja in that soundbite, and it's been pretty often, especially since February. We've kind of gotten short answers from Ja, but he's like, man, we just got to flip the script. We got to figure it out. He gives us a lot of just kind of 1-word, 2-word answers. Yeah. And we got it from Jaren as well after that Warriors game, where he's like, yeah, you'll ask him something, he'll give you like, yeah, plenty. Plenty we can learn from, for sure. Next question. And you can tell, you can feel the frustration oozing out of him. And it's almost, and Jaren especially is that guy where he's always kind of even keel, always, I would say, leaning more on the positive side than ever being, negative. And you feel it.
Yeah.
Especially, and for that Warriors game in particular, he fouls out, right? He said, it's all on me. I let the team down, this, that, and the third. But I think when your leaders, the top heavy is like looking the way they look, even though they're playing well, I would say, I think that really trickles down to the rest of the team.
It 100% does.
Yeah.
I played football at the University of Memphis. There's a thing that I like to call emotional follow the leader. If your guys come out, your quarterback, your wide, or some of your leaders, your captains that run out there before the game, if they have their struggles and they're not putting on a good or brave face for the rest of the team, you know that day's not going to go well for you. And I don't blame those guys for feeling the way they do. I bet they attack every single game with the same type of intensity,
right,
expecting to win. It's just not happening for them. And to your point about Jaren always being positive, I know he said it in sort of a tapered down tone, but
right,
the other night, that soundbite he had, where he tried to give us a little bit of a perception is reality when he said, it could be worse. We could all be homeless. So I was like, okay, I guess you're right.
And you're all looking at it
I guess
like,
you're correct. That's not what I want to hear.
That didn't come out the way you thought it did.
That's not what I want to hear, but I guess he's still trying to help us with a little bit of how we view things with the Grizzlies right now.
Yeah, and it's not viewed great. At the same time, while you're in this stretch, you're also wondering, is Tomas Isalo going to be the leader of this team moving forward? They obviously got rid of Taylor Jenkins with 9 games left in the regular season. You're wondering, is Tomas the long-term answer? And did they get rid of Taylor Jenkins now because they're trying to give him a longer runway than you would think a new interim coach might get? But at the same time, this is a team that is a playoff, I don't want to say contender, but they're going to be in the playoff, postseason of some sort. And for him to come in at this stage, in this juncture, I just wonder, Zach Kleiman said he has realistic expectations. He wants clarity of direction or whatever that means. But what does that mean, Gabe, going into the last however many games they have left?
I'm going to look in this camera. He's probably the favorite to be the next head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies. That's the way I view it. And that's the way that, like, if you follow the reporting on how he got the job, that's where you would be as well. That's the conclusion you would draw. They paid $1 million plus buyout to bring him over from Europe.
He was happy in Europe.
He was a guy who, by all indications, was in the mix to get a job with the Wizards. Not an assistant coaching job, not the lead assistant for the Wizards. They wanted him to be a head coach.
Big dog.
So this is a guy that I think around the NBA, very respected, brings a different type of offense to the table, a little more equal opportunity, a little bit more off-ball movement. We've heard, Draymond Green talk about it earlier in the season when the Grizzlies handled business against the Warriors. He said, this is just weird. This is strange. We have to get some film on this and start to understand it, but he still mixes in some of the old concepts. You see a lot more high pick and roll since he's taken over as head coach. So I would say he is absolutely auditioning for this gig. And to me, I start to think about, with Taylor Jenkins gone, what would this coaching search look like realistically? Like who else out there do you think is a realistic hire? Because I don't necessarily get the sense from Zach Kleiman that he's into going and getting a veteran coach.
Yeah.
The likes of Monty Williams or Mike Brown or whoever is out there on the open market. It seems like he wants to go this direction.
And to that point, those veteran coaches have had their struggles in recent stops, right?
Sure.
Monty Williams had essentially the same roster with these Detroit Pistons, and they look a lot different now with JB Bickerstaff than they look with Monty Williams. And you have what ended up being a disaster for Mike Brown in Sacramento after what was essentially a playoff team a couple of years ago with more or less the same roster. So it's easy to say, oh yeah, go get a veteran coach, but these veteran coaches have not had the best success over the last couple of teams with teams that we have seen be successful or are being successful now with similar rosters. So to that point, I can see why he doesn't go for like the super obvious favorites. A lot of people have thrown Sam Cassell's name out there. Sam
Cassell, yep.
Which is, I think, is a guy that could. I think he's going to immediately command respect because of his time in the league and who he was going to know, right, and what he's done as a player. And he's been an assistant for a long time. He's definitely waited his turn. It could be his time. But to your point, I think Isalo is just. I think they're a team that if he can get their ear here in these last few regular season games, if they can eke out some kind of success in the playoffs, I can see, we get that tweet notification here from Shams Charania in the middle of June maybe and says, yeah,
Sure.
Isolo is going to be the head coach of the future.
And I get the sense with Zach Kleiman, I don't know if you feel the same way, but like when it comes to those veteran coaching options, or a guy like Sam Cassell, who's been an assistant coach for years, I just get the sense that he's more into a coach that is going to come in here like Taylor Jenkins, embrace analytics, be that type of guy. And I think Tomas Asalo probably fits that a little better for his liking than some of those guys that have either been on an NBA bench before or played in the 90s and the early 2000s.
Right.
I think he's looking for the sort of new age type of coach. You look at Mark Daigneault with the with Oklahoma City Thunder. I know that this team stinks, but Will Hardy with the Jazz, like guys like that, I think are sort of more his style than some of these former players, former coaches.
I think you're trying to figure out what this roster looks like with the new head coach, right? Because a lot of this falls on Zach Kleiman, the swing and misses that he's had.
Yeah.
Obviously, you think about Marcus Smart and how that didn't really work out. You get rid of Jake LaRavia. He looks like, I won't say a different player, but maybe a better player with the Sacramento Kings than what he was doing here in Memphis. You doubled down on Vince Williams. You doubled down on Gigi Jackson, who is not really fair to them, right? Both of them had injuries coming into the year. You didn't really get a training camp. You're trying to get your body ramped up, and it just doesn't really go your way. But whoever this new head coach is going to have to really take on this roster, and you hope they can make something successful out of it, because you got that big three of Ja, Jaren, and Dez, and you've got to maximize the contracts that they have, and you have so many of these guys who are on $1-2 million deals, et cetera, et cetera. Let's get into the next thing. NBA reportedly investigating an incident between Ja Morant and Buddy Hield during that Warriors game. We'd like to forget that Warriors game if we could, but after a pair of free throws, Morant was seen doing his celebration towards the Warriors bench, which could be interpreted as finger guns, if that's what you want to call it. Devin Walker of Grind City Media, shout out to him, tweeted this photo of Hield also doing the gesture back at Morant with the caption, "Tell the whole story," and Morant retweeted this in his own defense. Shams Charania reported this morning, both players and teams received warnings, but no penalties at this time. Really quickly, Gabe, what'd you think about this scenario? Goofy, yeah?
It is just beyond me. It's so dumb. I know what Ja's been through in the past, but if we're going to set this precedent that he can't do what normal people do on an NBA basketball floor, I can't get behind that. And what I will say is, if Adam Silver and the NBA and the NBA Players Association want to get together, like the NFL has, like they've gotten rid, the NFL's gotten rid of finger guns, nose wipe first down celebration, all these different things that they don't want to be a part of their game or their image.
Right.
The NBA is well within their right to meet with the NBA Players Association and say, no more finger guns, no more gun gestures. But to me, this is such a non-story, and it really relies on the fact that the Warriors and the Grizzlies hate each other and they're just being petty.
Sure.
And the fact that Ja was not the guy who started this, it was Buddy Hield, and then
he was on the bench. You can't see it, but he's on the bench.
He was the reactor in this situation. It's so stupid. I hate to put it that way. I think the NBA makes some good decisions, but Adam Silver to make this example out of Ja Morant, because that's how it was reported, by the way. Shams Charania comes out
it was
and
Ja.
says, it's a
hold on.
Wait, he said it's a Ja probe, and then he decides afterwards to tweet, Buddy Hield's being investigated.
And you think about this starts because NBC, Bay Area, whatever it is, the Warriors brought their broadcast tweets it out with just, the jaw cut out of him pointing it. And I guess what I thought was funny about this is Ja's been doing the celebration for months now. Granted, is he holding it on the way to a timeout to the bench? Yes. He does this after every three-pointer since at least beginning of March.
Well, and also, let's look at the history of the NBA and even the NBA this year. There's been clips of Dyson Daniels before the new year, just hitting a three-pointer in somebody's face and immediately doing something
Scottie
like that.
Pippen does the same thing.
How about LeBron James?
Right.
In the finals, not just holding one up, reloading, cocking it, and then holding it up. Come on, man. I understand what Ja's been through, but not every bit of information you take in on the guy has to come back to what he's been through in the past 2 years.
Yeah, fair enough. And to Ja's credit, he tweeted out Ja this, Ja that, like he wasn't really too worried about the whole thing. Anyway.